Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for a few quick updates from the math department, reminders and updates. I know that throughout the year I've been sending out a lot of emails because there have been a lot of updates. So I wanted to offer this opportunity for you to hear me kind of talk through some of the updates that have been going on. Some of these items apply to everyone, some of these items only apply to integrated math teachers. So I've tried to structure this so that the information that everyone should hear is in the beginning and the more specific integrated math information is at the end. So we're going to be talking a little bit about PLCs and what's going on with those and where you can get the information necessary to be successful. Talking about graded responses on both the SAT as well as common assessments. Speaking about assessment and curriculum revisions for integrated teachers only. How to access Walch files through either Curriculum Engine or Shared Drive. So just as a reminder, feel free to listen to this video or you could choose to read through the document that I'm attaching. So first of all, let's talk about our PLCs and some updates. Thank you all for doing your September PLCs. I did receive action reports from everyone. One quick thing that I did notice in looking over those files is that some of the sign-in sheets weren't as specific as we needed to be. Everyone did have the physical signatures, so that was great, but you do need to make sure you include the name of your PLC on the sheet. For example, Bremen Math 1. Tinley Park Math 2. Please make sure that you're including both the school as well as the level of integrated math that your PLC is working on. Also, the time of the meeting. Everyone put a start time, but only a couple of people put a start and end time. In order for the PD to be awarded through the state of Illinois, we do need to see the duration that the meeting was held, so please include a start and a finish time. As a reminder, those meetings should be about 1 hour in length. That's how our PD was calculated. Also, please provide a specific location, for example, Hillcrest Room 210. Make sure that it's specific in case, once again, the state comes back to ask those questions. In addition, with the PLCs, I know that this year has been a little bit more of a hands-off approach on my end, but I do want to just keep reiterating what is the purpose of the PLC, and that is using the data as the crux of our conversations. So a few very, very, very important notes that I hope that everyone can follow along with, and if I can offer any help or clarification, please let me know. If you teach an integrated math level, Math 1, Math 2, any level, you need to make sure you're bringing your individual data to your PLC meetings. This is what we can use to have conversations about how are we doing? How are we doing question by question, compared to the building, compared to the district? Secondly, I need the PLC teams to be using the data that maps it to building and district performance, which is posted in the shared drive. So if you go into your shared drive to Math Department, PLCs, Mastery Manager results from assessment data, you can actually pull up every specific common assessment for Math 1 and Math 2 of all levels. Within each of the folders, you will find a copy of the assessment, a reminder that not all of the assessments are the same. For example, an Honors Math 1 1.1 assessment might look different than regular Math 1 1.1 assessment. So when you're having those data conversations, make sure you're talking apples to apples instead of apples to oranges. This data can be really helpful because you can use historical data to take action proactively before you teach a lesson this year. So whether or not you taught integrated last year or not, you can look at what the performance was from last school year and already kind of make predictions about what questions do we need to hit harder, what questions did the students seem to do well with, and seek guidance from your experience or the experience of others. Another important use of this data is to use the current data to prepare for upcoming assessments. So if you're looking at your progress assessments, how can you use that data to make predictions or to make action plans to help increase performance on unit and semester exams? Also, we can't do any of this without teachers staying on top of their assessments. I need everyone to make sure that they're not only scanning their assessments, but that they're scanning them as soon as possible and that they're keeping up with the pace of the curriculum as fit. So I know that some different circumstances pop up. Never everyone's going to be on the same page at the same time, But as a reminder, we do want to make sure that nobody's getting too far off the beaten path. And if you are, I would encourage you to reach out to me or to a colleague and see what we can do to try to make sure that you're feeling comfortable and confident with the material. Gridded responses. So shifting gears, once again, this is for all teachers. The gridded response section is a specific sort of question on the SAT as well as on some of our common assessments. So that gridded response on the SAT includes 4 boxes where students would grid in a digit or a decimal point or a division sign for a fraction. So in an effort to prepare students for questions like these, we did create items like this on common assessments. Whether or not you are teaching integrated or not, reviewing these with our students is very important, as I found that myself as well as other math department members weren't aware fully of how those gridded responses need to be answered. So a few reminders. On the SAT and on common assessments, fractions do not need to be simplified. Answers that are less than 4 digits can be aligned on the left or on the right side of the available 4 boxes. You don't have to choose which side. If you're going to have a mixed number answer, mixed numbers have to be converted to improper fractions or decimal responses. If you obtain a decimal response with more digits than the grid can accommodate, you're allowed to either round it or truncate it, but you must fill in the entire grid for any decimal that's 4 or more digits. So a little bit more specifically, a lot of people had some questions about leading and trailing zeros. So for example, if you get an answer of 128, what you don't want to do is you do not want to record that as 0128. And you don't want to add a decimal point on there if that's an exact answer. So keep it the simplest as possible. So you shouldn't have leading zeros at the front end of an answer, and you shouldn't have trailing zeros that don't have any additional place value. Another thing to consider is if you get an answer of 3/4, 3/4 can be aligned either on the left side or the right side. You can express that as 0.75. But you would not want to make that 0.75 with a leading zero, just like you would not want to make it 0.750 with a trailing zero at the end. One big thing for anyone teaching integrated, as well as people on the SAT will only have non-negative responses. Because of the nature of some of our common assessments, we did find it necessary to include negative responses. You can see in the corner of this presentation an example of one of our common assessments that does have a positive and negative grid-in box available. For problems like these on our common assessments, obviously if it's a negative answer, you do have to bubble in the negative. If it's a positive answer, I will accept the answer with the positive sign bubbled in or not bubbled in. But on the SAT, you will not see any negative answers, so please reinforce that with your students. All right, next up, if you are not an integrated teacher, I thank you for your time. I'm going to continue now just with integrated information. As we go through the integrated curriculum, we know that we're constantly thinking about revisions and ways to make the curriculum and the assessments better. So in order to provide an opportunity for integrated teachers to put forth suggestions, I'm going to be creating a Google Doc for everyone to contribute to when you have something that you feel you want to add or suggest or comment on. So in those Google Docs, it'll be arranged by unit. So we'll have a Math 1 Unit 1, Math 2 Unit 1, etc., etc. When we're filling that out, what I am asking for is if you are suggesting something, to do that in black text with your name next to it. So for example, if you want to suggest something be modified to the Math 2 1.3 progress assessment, I'd ask you to create that heading in black and attach your name to it. So explain Kelly Ladiak suggests this. Then others who are teaching that same content can offer their suggestions, their opinions on it in a different color. So I ask if you're responding to a recommendation that you select another color, record your name so that we can kind of have an ongoing conversation together about what suggestions would happen. So please make sure your suggestions are specific, For example, if you're suggesting a change to a common assessment, what exact wording would you like the change to be? Or what exact graphic would you like provided? Please be as specific as possible, because if we're vague, we're not going to know where we want to go. So what are some things that you could consider? You can consider suggesting the modification of a common assessment, eliminating a question on a common assessment, adding additional questions, changing the format of a question on a common assessment, for example, changing it from multiple choice to graded response, modifying the pacing of material. I would be hesitant on that one until you finish the unit, at least to see how things spiral around. And suggesting additional notes in the pacing guide. For example, things you've learned that you wish you would have known going into the curriculum the first time. Was there an opportunity to use technology, or should you have been using technology? Should you have skipped a certain question? Should we have done more problems of a certain nature? So please, once again, be very, very specific on that. I will cut off those comments in a certain point so that I can start actually doing those updates that I find that I think the entire department can agree on. All right, finally, Walch resources. I know that Curriculum Engine has been a bit of a headache, but we are working through those problems, and I appreciate your patience. So as a reminder, you can get access to Walch resources in two different ways. The first way is to gain access through the shared drive, and so I have the pathway listed there: shared drive, math department, math 1 or math 2, whatever level you are teaching, Walch materials, and then select the individual files from student workbook folder. From there, you'll see everything from warm-ups to guided practice to skills practice, all sorts of different documents. They're available for you to download as a PDF. So what are the benefits of using shared drive? Well, the organization is a little bit more user-friendly. All of the PDFs have labels at the top of them with the lesson titles, for example, 2.1.3 practice. And it aligns directly with the printed student workbooks. Some cons are that graph paper is not embedded on a lot of the worksheets. Additionally, the titles that you find on there may differ from Curriculum Engine titles. For example, as you know, they've changed the title of what we used to call scaffolded practice to be guided practice on Curriculum Engine. So you're kind of going to be talking two different languages there. We are also working to upload problem-based task coaching questions. I want to send a big thank you out to Jackie Stryzek and Ryan Wellborn for organizing all of those files for us in the shared drive. The second way to get Walch resources is via Curriculum Engine. So you would launch your Clever app, and remember I did send out a Google Doc that explained how you can launch Clever. Currently, something I would like to point out that is something I think that we should address is right now no one's actually using Curriculum Engine with its full capacity. Right now everyone is using it essentially parallel to the way that they're using shared drive. So it's a way for teachers to go, access PDFs, download them, and then upload them to your Google Classroom. In the future, the whole idea is that we would use it as a learning management system, and we would get training from Walch, hopefully at the January Institute, to teach us how to utilize those features. So for example, you can assign an interactive practice set of problems to students, and Walch will grade it for them, provide feedback to the students, and you also get some data on your end, so you could go into the lesson the next day going, okay, everyone got 1 and 2, but problem number 3 was a huge debacle. It also allows for a little bit more interactivity, some drag and drop items, so it's a little bit more interactive than our typical PDF worksheets. So if you're going to use Curriculum Engine, I do want to remind you of a couple of the pros and a couple of the cons. One of the biggest benefits is that they listened to our suggestion last year to embed graph paper into problems. So the worksheets on Curriculum Engine tend to have embedded graphs for the practice problems, which means it's a little bit easier for the students. They don't have to flip back and forth or grab out a piece of graph paper. Also, there's a lot of different abilities there to utilize the online versions like I just talked about. I don't think everyone's ready for that full launch, but hopefully after the training in January, you will be ready. Also, there's access to something called the Learning Object Repository that has thousands of additional resources. Once again, training will be provided on that. Some cons to it is we're finding some instances of misalignment where you're going to a certain section on Curriculum Engine and the worksheet you're anticipating to find is not the one that you're seeing in front of you. When something like that happens, I really need you to reach out to me. I've already had a few people ahead of the game sending me those emails so I can communicate with Walch that those issues are out there. That way one of your colleagues in the future isn't going to Curriculum Engine, not knowing the curriculum from maybe not teaching it before, and accidentally grabbing the wrong resource to be sharing with their students. Another con of Curriculum Engine right now is that the PDFs that are on there have no header indicating what section that resource comes from. So you won't see 2.1.3 practice at the top of it. So just consider those things as you're working through it. I know this is a lot of information. I have shared most of this information with you before, but I just felt like some of it has been lost in translation perhaps. Sometimes it's a lot of information and so we're not able to hold on to it all. So hopefully if you did listen to this, you learned some new things, and please provide any questions or feedback you have to me. I'd like to make sure that you guys are getting the most out of your experience. Thanks so much.